Craig, congratulations on your Oscar nomination for Deepwater Horizon as Best Visual Effects. How did it feel when you got the news you'd been nominated?
Well, it felt really surreal, to be honest with you. I was on set shooting, and no one really knew what I'd worked on before. I was kind of surrounded by people who weren't really aware of what was going on. So I had basically a whole day to kind of just soak it in myself. And, I'm sure I made horrible decisions on set that day. I wasn't really paying attention. But I think it was okay. It was nice. I mean, I was able to kind of absorb it, and I would get texts through the day and just kind of, answer them at my own pace. But it was a little bit of a surprise. Visual effects is a little odd. I think it's odd. This is a little bit new to me, but the fact that they do a bake-off where the top 10 films present, and then people at that bake-off vote that night to see who's nominated. So there was a reception afterwards, and my presentation had gotten a really good reception. So I kind of had an idea that it might happen, but it still kind of out of the blue.
Well, congratulations again. You guys actually just had a very good night at the Visual Effects Society Awards, where you won 2 prizes for supporting visual effects and for the model for the Deepwater rig. What was that night like? What did that kind of recognition mean for you and your team?
Oh, well, it's huge. I mean, this is it's not the marquee project at ILM, during this time period. There's Star Wars going on. There's a lot of other films going on, and we managed to keep it our production relatively quiet, on the landscape here. And so, being recognized, honestly, just getting through it was a huge, accomplishment. But being actually recognized for the work, it gives a lot of, I think it gives us all a lot of confidence moving forward, under our next projects and stuff, that we're actually making right decisions. It's funny, in a business like this, you spend, 90% of your time thinking that you're failing. It's good to actually get some recognition and know that you're on the right track.
Well, again, congratulations. Let's talk about that work, because, like you said, I mean, it's very subtle work, but it's nonetheless very impressive. I mean, when you think about all that you have to deal with in terms of working with fire and water and creating this Deepwater rig, what were some of the specific visual effects challenges that this film presented?
Well, boy, there were quite a few, actually. And one is striking the balance between, it's a real story with kind of real drama, and a real need to be respectful and to represent what went on faithfully. And you get into a movie, and it's really tempting to just start going over the top, with everything. So that was a challenge, trying to keep it true to the story, and also trying to strike the balance of how much information to give and how much to just let it be an entertaining story. Everyone knew about the rig, everyone knew about the disaster, but we're trying to tell a little bit of the details of it up front, and then the story of the people on the backside. So it's a tricky. You can get trapped in a rabbit hole very easily of how much information do you try to feed the audience. And very quickly it gets boring, and very quickly it gets monotonous. And I think Pete and the editors did a great job of writing that line. And so we had just enough work underwater to build the tension of what's going on, a mile below the rig, and the engineering of it, and the steps that led up to the catastrophe. And that has its own challenge of, underwater work is great. I mean, you can really do some beautiful work in that environment, the water. So, everything's a challenge of, you can't really make it look the way it would look, because it's be completely dark. So there's no real light. How do you show light and not make it feel like it's close to the surface? How do you tell the story of what's happening inside the pipes, you know, and keep it in this real kind of gritty storytelling? You know, you can't go to kind of infographics, you know, to try to spell out the mechanisms. So, you know, the challenge was how to design those shots to be, you know, more documentary style than feature film, and still be cinematic and try to, you know, come up with some beautiful looking images. There's that aspect of it. There's the rig itself, which, you know, shockingly, there's not a lot of documentation of that actual rig, at least photographic documentation, and there's not many others like it that were built. You know, there was one other rig that was a sister rig to it that is the same model, same year, that we had plans to try to go out and photograph. Of course, you know, there's all kinds of permissions you need for that, which the oil industry was reluctant to give because of the nature of the film, and you know, so that was taken off the table pretty quickly, and then it became this, you know, a research project. And then, you know, how do you build a rig that's that big to the detail level you need? You know, we went into the shooting without much knowledge of where we were going to be shooting on it, where the stories, you know, where Pete would want to tell the stories of the action. So we had to build the whole thing to a really high detail level, which, you know, is a big challenge and a big kind of you know, management challenge. But, you know, luckily here at ILM we've built big models before, so we had the people, you know, and we were able to bring the people on that we were confident could do it correctly, and so that gave us a little bit of freedom, you know, so that I wasn't having to handcuff the production to say, you know, Pete, you can't really go shoot over there because that's not going to fly. It's just not going to work, right? You know, I mean, there's no corralling the filming once it starts, you know, especially a story like this that wants to be, you know, you want to kind of let the actors react to what pyro you have on set and follow them with their natural reactions, and couldn't follow around Pete and say, you can't go there, you can't go there. You know, the best you can do is follow the cameraman around and go, try not to film him against this video wall, you know, but still, you got to let it go. So there's all those challenges, and then there's the challenge of the fire. How to tell fire at that scale and that quality, because you can't shoot fire like that, at least not in the United States. You know, there's all kinds of environmental problems with shooting large fire with black smoke. You know, the chemicals you need to use are just they're not allowed anymore, and of course, on a movie like this where it's about an environmental disaster, you don't want to be causing one yourself, right? So, you know, it was evident really early that we'd have to spend some time and some development getting the fire to look good in CG and to kind of carry the bulk of the work in CG for the fire. And you know, anyone who's been on set or seen, you know, movie fire, you know, they do amazing things with it to try to mask what it is, but you know, it's very safe, very clean fire. And so, you know, there was a fair bit of it that was on the sets that we had to heavily augment, replace completely. I mean, it was obvious, anything but tight shots, you'd need a full CG oil rig, because the amount of fire on it casts so much light that you could never do it on a set. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the whole marriage of, I mean, it's a handful of real challenges that were fun to do, because again, it's a story that everybody cares about. You know, it's effects that are real world effects, which, you know, is kind of a luxury to try to do. And you know, you're given enough freedom to do it in a very kind of cinematic way, it ends up being really, really rewarding.
You mentioned something earlier about uh, Pete Berg's directing style, and I wonder, you know, with the way that this film is structured stylistically as being like a docudrama, can you talk a bit about how much the specific style of a film affects the work that you do?
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, it affects it quite a bit. I mean, there are films like this which really need to be just grounded in reality, you know, to a level that is imperceptible. And you know, the style of the movie is very fast-paced action. You know, once things start happening, you know, there's the beginning of the movie, which is a relatively slow build-up, and you're allowed, you know, some time to kind of you know, get engrossed in the environment, and that's a huge challenge. In that, you know, those shots are lingering, right? That you get a good look at a lot of stuff, and you need the audience not to think about what they're seeing at all, you know, to just be with the characters on the rig. And then later on, it's all very fast-paced action, which means also that, you know, you need to stay inside the story, and the effects can't be noticed as effects at all, because you rely on the idea that the story is building tension, and for it to build tension, you need to believe the peril that the people are in. To do that, you can't be brought out of the real world danger by thinking about CG at all through any process of it. It'll just take you right back to zero as far as tension goes. So there's quite a bit of burden there that might not really exist on a fantasy movie, where, you know, the audience from the beginning is broken from reality, and you know, there's effects in it that, you know, it's just fantastic, right? But isn't something that people have seen before, so they have no anchor to visual anchor to know whether it's right or wrong. It's just a whole different burden, and you know, on a film like this where it's all handheld, you know, it's very frenetic. You approach the filming of it much differently. The end work, you know, once it gets back to ILM, is not much different, you know, in how you approach it. But the actual filming is much different, because you have so little control over it. Like I say, you know, there's not a lot of time to say, I need a green screen over here, I need a blue screen here. You know, it's very frenetic, and in a story like this that wants to have that kind of chaos and energy, you in some ways just have to let it go. You ask for everything you can, and the special effects department did an amazing job of giving me everything I could have asked for and more. But you can't worry about it so much while you're shooting. You know, you just have to trust that, you know, the people back here at ILM will know how to deal with it, you know, and because you get into a trap again when you're shooting of thinking, you know, constantly thinking, oh, this is a disaster, this is never going to work, this is, you know, but, you know, there's 30 plus years of experience back here to know how to sort those things out.
Well, I'm sure also before the cameras start rolling, you've had these conversations about what's going to be practical, what's going to be CGI, and you kind of already, you sort of know already going into it those specific decisions.
You do, except that they'll point the camera anywhere they want to. Right. You know, so going into a shot where you're like, you know, this is on this corner of the set, we're going to have practical fire set up to interact with these people here and in the background here. But as soon as the camera starts rolling and someone goes right instead of left, you know, that plan just goes all to hell. And, you know, then it's again, it's a reaction that you want. You want the actors to be able to react to what, you know, their natural instincts are. and then you just have to deal with it later. But yeah, there is quite a bit of pre-planning. You know, we came into this project late, actually. The project started with another director, another visual effects crew, and then once Pete came on, you know, we started getting involved. But it was a relatively short pre-production before the filming to work all this out, and you know, there was quite a bit of planning already done that we just kind of had to inherit a little bit.
Talk a bit more about Pete Berg. You've worked with him before. What is that collaboration like, and his energy like?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's full of energy.
I know, I've met him a couple times.
yeah, he's an intense guy, which is great. I mean, especially when you're doing this kind of story, you know, I mean, working with Pete Berg on a romance, you know, it would be a disaster. But in a movie like this, you know, which is kind of catered to his sensibilities and, you know, also our capabilities, you know, it's a good marriage. And I worked with him before, but you know, when I did work on Battleship, it was all in post. Someone else was on set with him, so I didn't really interact with him all that much. And so this was a bit of a new relationship, which, you know, Pete likes to surround himself with people he knows, people he can trust, and he has a very good crew that, you know, he'll rely on. And I was kind of a new face, so it took a little bit. You know, it's visual effects is also really hard because it's all about trust. You know, I'm not going to be showing him things for months and months, you know, and we're on set, and he has to kind of trust that I can see what they're shooting and know what the end picture is going to look like. And that's, I mean, that's hard for a lot of people, but especially, you know, someone who likes to control, you know, the process, like Pete, and who doesn't actually enjoy, you know, dealing with visual effects. You know, he's much more tangible. You know, he wants to know people's stories. He wants to tell people's stories. You know, and visual effects is needed because it's usually, you know, the more dramatic stories require it. But you know, it's a part of the process that, you know, requires a lot of patience, and that's a big ask, especially when, you know, I'm a new face to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, congratulations, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It was a
Absolutely.
real pleasure, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good one.